Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to Shadowverse. So, I had quite an awful experience with the last subchapter of Entropy's Abyss, so hopefully the actual final subchapter, the last one I did, but the actual final one, is a little bit better and we can make some more progress. I definitely needed to take quite a break after that, though. That was irritating, to say the least. And here we have yet another pop-up trying to show a new character here. He looks like he's probably a Vampire Craft character. But I don't think I'm getting that far into the story at this rate. Yeah. And in all fairness, it's not like just that one subchapter was bad. There's been more than enough bad subchapters or just full-on chapters in this story that if I had any sense in me, I would have long since abandoned the single player. This was the story that really irritated me. So the big reveal should happen here as far as this Dracula spelled backwards if you replace C with Z, because Castlevania already has Alucard. This character, he has been showing up in everybody else's story, affecting this version of their timelines, giving them, I guess, good endings. Like, at the end of the day, this character ended her story on kind of a good ending. This guy ended on kind of a good ending, and this guy ended on kind of a good ending. So you would just kind of expect that he's also going to get his happy ending, or at least slightly good ending. So until we get to the next chapter, which fortunately the next chapter is a combined chapter, so it isn't 4 sub-chapters, which equates to, I would say, like 36 of these story chapters. And we'll start again with the repeated content, because that's how they present it.
And shadow. A curse spreads its bat-like wings over the land.
I think this intro might be different for each one, but the ending is definitely the same.
The curtain rises on a new stage. Velsar, where shadows shroud all, covered by infinite rivers of blood. It is a land of claws, fangs, and strife, created by the Lord of Darkness.
Now, they list all the kinds of monsters, and vampires are not mentioned.
Dragon newts, vengeful souls, yokai, werewolves.
I guess they do mention vampires. So I guess the swords people were actually vengeful souls,
fang against fang, claw
instead of potentially yokai.
Who shall wear the crown in the end?
Although I'd believe them to also be
Will it
yokai.
Be the meek? He once sought vengeance for his kind, but has now lost his purpose.
Hopefully this is all voice acted and we have no internal dialogue, because that was driving me crazy, and I didn't pay attention to most of the non-voiced lines of dialogue. What sucks about these kinds of stories, though, is every time they show a new vampire, it seems to just be in a completely different universe or different timeline, and has nothing to do with the main vampire character they introduced at the beginning of the story.
Will it be the lost? She quests for her mother, following a trail of whispered words. But where the path will lead her, none
I
can
think
see.
it's worth pointing out, and I've played other visual novels where definitely this could have been the case. I'm not sure it really was the case. But I personally would like these branching path visual novels, which is effectively what this is there's 4 separate branches. I'd like them to start removing content and just streamlining themselves. Sure, you kind of need something that establishes the world or sets up a kind of informative amount of information, kind of like a tutorial in a video game. But the second time you play a video game, you don't need that tutorial. So it'd be nice if there's a way to skip it, or in visual novels case, for just to kind of spin things a little bit slower, faster, not slower, move the story along faster. I know some of the visual novels that I've played let me skip around, like rewind in time back to a point where there's an obvious crucial split and skip ahead, or just avoid the repeated stuff at the beginning, usually not skipping ahead past parts where I hadn't seen. And yeah, you could certainly have that happen here. You could have had the first story be the long one and the boring one that establishes the world, and then every other path you could have gotten rid of chapter 1 and just not bothered to show it. There of course needs to be a way to go back and see that content if you really want to go back and see that content, but perhaps you would have to like delete a save file to have that happen. And particularly in the case of Elazard here, it's a high chance that we're going to see him show up in all the scenes we've seen him in the other parts of the game, because that's exactly what they did with the Portalcraft character at the very beginning of the solo story, is that we just saw him show up in everybody else's story, and then when we saw his story, he showed up again, so they just reused everything. And so that's going to be a lot of redundancy if it goes that way, without really showing us anything different or giving us a different perspective on those interactions. See, we had already seen him being awoken in a bar, and maybe that's where his timeline starts. Always.
If you ask me, this is a pub.
Hey, you know who you're picking a fight with?
Of course I know who you
Actually, I think this is a different event, because I don't feel like there were any Oni or Karasu Tengu in the
That's going to hurt in the morning.
cutscene.
These rough fellas never give us any peace in here. Even Drock isn't here today. Did you notice? He's been watching you, you know.
Not a problem. If things are too quiet, I start to think too much.
You must know about Drock. If you take that attitude.
I will have another same again in Bloodshot.
So yeah, maybe we're seeing
Be careful with this stuff.
a few different characters, but it definitely seems like we are just having the same
If you're sure.
interaction. You have to be a pretty great writer to show the same scene twice and give it a significantly different meaning the second time.
I know they can be kind of loud. Well,
And
all Dragonoots
I
can,
don't
actually.
believe the
We're
writers
not really known
of
for
this
being
are
quiet.
anywhere close to that level of skill.
I've been watching you for a while now. You can really drink, can't you? Even we don't drink bloodshots.
Well, Dragonoots use it as a fire starter.
You think we're going to go wild and breathe fire with it?
I doubt you need Bloodshots to go wild, Drock.
You... I don't recall telling you my name.
So maybe this is a slightly different timeline. This feels a little different.
It would be hard not to know your name, young chief of the Dragonoot clan.
Huh. If you know who I am,
Of course,
then why aren't you scampering off with your tail between your legs?
the problem here
I have no tail.
is if we're either seeing a timeline
fighting is against bar rules.
that is before
But I've always
Drock's
been a rebel.
perfect timeline that we saw in his storyline,
There he goes
or
again.
we're seeing a timeline past that point, so it was then
fights when he doesn't like somebody.
not really worth our time to watch the 3 other
Sure talks a big game.
sub-chapters, which more than likely it is true, is that
If you have to whisper it,
you didn't,
better not say anything at all.
you really could have just skipped over
You're
to this
still not
sub-chapter
scared.
and watched this,
Have you taken
and
a
you would have
disliking
gotten
to
most
me?
of the same
All I
idea.
did was sit here quietly, paying you no mind.
No, I don't like you. And people I don't like go poof. Like smoke.
I am well aware of that.
I wonder if the idea
That has nothing to do
of
with
writing
me.
stories like this is just so that you can play as Alucard in a
Let me prove
card
I'm not
battle
worth taking
against
your
all the
anger
other
out on.
characters. Because I guess that's really what they would hope could happen.
Quit being rude to our master.
Don't think we'd stay quiet.
At some level, it would be kind of interesting to have a story mode where you play as the bad guy against the good guys instead of playing as the good guys.
Shot.
I would expect someone
Although
with
the
ability
assumption
to
there
work
is that
out yourself.
if you were playing as the Darth Vader in a Star Wars game, Darth Vader still would have to have some way of being defeated.
Taking you out won't even be worth boasting about. It wouldn't be a hunt, just slaughter. Sorry about this. The way you were acting caught me off guard. I mistook you for just another idiot after the throne.
So it seems like this
With
is
that skill, you'd
still
never
going
be able to
fine.
challenge the dragon dudes. Here, have a drink on me.
I will take a bloodshot.
Not so good with a sword, but you sure can hold your liquor. Mind if I join ya?
Not at all.
I wonder
Huh. I thought you were the kind of
if
guy
this
who'd
is
wander
really
alone.
just like one of the
You're not so
first
bad. I
loops,
take back about not liking you.
and it took
I like a heated
Alazard
debate. Barkeeper,
hundreds,
two
if not
blood shots.
thousands, of loops to get good
I
at
can't get a
fighting
break in
and
here. I wish your
get
lot wouldn't scare me all the time.
smart enough to how to manipulate the timeline.
So, what are we raising our drinks to?
To a peaceful future.
Ha, that's
There
impossible.
is
You know that the chaos
something
of
that
Elsa
needs
only
to
comes down when the
be
next
pointed
Lord of
out
Darkness
as far
is
as all
born.
of these stories, in that
Perhaps
they are all
in time,
100%
things will change.
violence. Like there's the
Fine,
only
I'll
slight
join you.
talk of romance
In
was
that case, to a
when they
dragon
introduced
who's sitting on the throne.
one of the 8 original
Say words
characters
you don't mean.
who was trying to resurrect her lost
What's
love, and that was it.
Sorry.
After that, they've
Forget I said
completely
anything.
forgotten about that idea. And
To the dragon
in all
nut.
fairness, there
No.
are some times with like the
Let us
cyborg
toast to your peace and
sisters where they
safety.
seem to love each
You
other,
really are weird.
but that
You
really
look
wasn't
like
the
they end
focus.
race around here. What are you really?
Most visual novels
nothing.
tend to either be
Just dust.
murder
Floating
mystery
on the air.
or weird sci-fi mystery stories,
Let us
or
drift
much
into
more
the future.
often they tend to be romance or adult sex dating sims. You very rarely have a visual novel that is all about violence, because the gameplay mechanic of a visual novel does not work well with violence. It is blatantly obvious that it doesn't work well, and even them throwing in the card game, it still doesn't really merge well.
I see.
I knew you were a beast, but I wasn't expecting this.
And if you think about
I
like
think I'm gonna be sick.
most of the cutscenes
First time I've ever lost
that would
a
be in
drinking
between
contest.
something like
I was not trying to best you.
Mortal
Only reason
Kombat,
anyone would order
it's
blood
usually
shots
just
is
a
if they're trying to
taunt
drink
or
someone under the
a
table.
single line of
Get alcohol
dialogue
poisoning.
to show that the two
Perhaps I
people
have built up
fighting
a tolerance.
have
They used
a
to
reason
be
to fight
bugs.
each other. Although, in all fairness,
But
one of
now
the
I can
most
drink it
recent
like
Mortal
water.
Kombats does end
Who
on
just
kind of
counts
a
blood
weird
shots?
visual
It's
novel
weird I
style
haven't heard of you
story
before.
ending.
You don't look like an Oni or a Tengu or any other kind
But-
of yokai.
Yeah, I guess Street
Oh,
Fighter might
could
be
it
even
You're the
even better
one with
example
many
of
tails.
not really
I
even
told you
trying to put
earlier.
a story.
I have no tail.
Then what are you? Ugh, I'm gonna throw up.
And for the times that they did want to give Street Fighter a story, they would make a movie or an anime or a comic book, something completely separate from the game.
On a tempest of blood. One whose constant companion is blood.
Very funny. Only place vampires exist are in legends.
Well, the good news is this is all voice so far.
Blood-sucking monsters that feed on our kind, right? Supposedly my ancestors hunted them all to extinction.
I see.
I'm having a hard time figuring you out, buddy.
Seems like the vampires always get hunted to extinction in every world.
That's not such a bad thing. Feels like I'm talking to grass or trees.
Same here. Normally, the other customers would all be gone by now. But I don't like silence.
There is, I
You should
guess,
join me then.
something to point out
Dragon
here
Attack
in
Commander,
that
greatest fighting force on Velsar.
compared to
And
something
Rock
like
right now.
Digimon or
We
Pokemon,
have a good time, you know?
Shadowverse has
They
been
do like
fairly
trouble.
lazy on leaning on the tropes of monsters. They barely put any kind of new thought into it,
What you mean
even
by
in just
that?
random card
No
designs.
matter how many of these I down, no matter how many people I am with,
At best, you could claim
they do not
that
stop
Shadowverse
the
tries to
loneliness.
make some of the monsters look a little bit
I
more
get it.
anime moe-esque, but
Everyone
that's about
around me's
it.
changed. But I'm still the same dumb kid I was years ago. Still longing to touch the sky.
But
Childish, perhaps.
yeah, particularly in the
but a
story,
beautiful dream.
this guy looks
It's
exactly like a
Normally I
ripoff
hate
of
people who talk
Alucard,
as if they know me.
and Jock looks
But I
exactly
don't
like
dislike it in you.
a dragon character of some sort,
I'm sobering
except for
up
he's got
now. And all my
funny
buddies have left
ears,
me.
elf ears, and
Guess I'll
funny
have to walk
horns
home
that are
alone.
like
Come
deer
drink with us
antlers.
next time. Just go easy on the bloodshot's, okay, buddy? Anyways, the streets around here can be dangerous, so be careful.
Yes.
In comparison,
I hear they're haunted by
while some
witches.
Pokemon are kind of
You've
generic,
really got a thing for legends,
a lot
don't
of
you?
them are just like completely from left field,
You are one heck of a
and
guy.
Digimon
I don't know how you have the guts
kind
to
of
speak to drunk
leads
like
heavily in trying to
Were you scared?
take some generic
Terrified.
creatures and
He's the
add
leader of the
more
dragon meats. He could snap his fingers and my head
electronics
would roll.
and
He's normally
internet
chatting up and drinking with the
elements
lasses. Some
to
call
the
him useless,
Digimon.
but he's got a whole clan backing him up.
Thank you, barkeeper. I will take my leave now.
Aye, aye. Oh, and don't worry about the money. When Drock's here, he picks up everyone's tab.
I know.
So that was too long,
Almost
though.
time.
That entire encounter,
My, you are astute.
the entire
I could
encounter
sense it.
needed to kind of be shown, but it could have been
Do you know my name? Or
definitely
rather, do you remember my
could have
name?
been shorter.
No. You could be a witch for all I know. But I know.
Odd. I assumed you immortal types lost all track of time after a while. Well, what gave it away?
The smell of blood. It emanates from me, you, this entire world. A stench this strong cannot be the product of one, or even two wars.
So, the scent lingers even after the world's reset. How curious.
How many times have we had this conversation? When can I
I'm actually
finally
paying
rest?
attention here.
Your
Which
end
means
will
it's
come when
actually
it is
interesting.
meant to.
What can I do to make it come?
Follow your fate.
Why appear before me if you will not answer my questions?
Because I am not a part of this play. I'm an audience member. It's not my place to meddle.
And appearing before me is not meddling?
It's not. Because I say it isn't.
Why did things turn out this way?
Would the answer to that question help you in any way?
Yeah, there's not a lot to
I see
say
there's
when
no
you're actually
point in
paying
speaking
attention.
to you.
Even though they're not
Where are
really
you
saying much of
going?
anything. He's
Who
just teasing
knows?
them.
This world no longer has anything to do with me.
My, with all you know, I suppose it can't be helped that you've become jaded. But you cannot ignore fate. You'd only be prolonging your suffering. And we don't want that, do we, Alizard?
So I'm just eating a cough drop since I'm coughing while listening to this. We may just burn through this. I don't want to get my hopes set high, but we may very well get through this in less than 50 minutes if we skip all the battles and everything just moves fairly quickly. Although, at 3.6 megabytes, that's probably a pretty long cutscene we're about to see. And the animations and the art are things that would have pretty much already been downloaded. It's only the audio that's downloaded then.
Hey, you! You're the one who was picking a fight at the bar earlier.
No, that was just the alcohol talking. I would never defy Guido.
The chatter calms me.
Is it possible
No more talking. Run.
that
I'm sorry.
each of the previous 3 characters' happy ending happened in the same timeline?
I consider it pathetic to die for honor.
We are in agreement there.
So is he seeing a vision?
Taken all these roads and experienced all these futures. Deja vu. Such an unpleasant, empty feeling. Not something I can get used to.
The thing we're not really getting is why the
interesting this time.
when the fortune teller resets things.
Now, the question is, was it fate
It would be
that cursed me?
a little bit better story if she reset things and stopped people from getting their happy ending right as they're about to reach it.
Accept your fate.
Or is this my own foolishness? I made it.
And who are you supposed to be?
Much like some of the visual novels, to get the perfect ending, the perfect path, you do in a lot of those branching path visual novels have to do the right thing in multiple points at multiple points in time.
I cannot attack and defend you
And
at the
that
same
seems pretty much what's happening here, is we're seeing
Just waltz in
Alazar
here.
do
You
the
have
perfect
another thing
path
coming.
when he's going to
You
save
tried to fell me before,
everybody.
This time will be no different.
Really? Oh, I guess this is probably a fight, not the whole story. That'd be a weird point for it to end.
Will things
There
never
was no
change?
point in them making the female wolf
are you?
there.
I am Alizar.
Clearly, you could have
Pleased to
reduced
make your
the number of
acquaintance again.
animated characters they
Ninetales.
needed to make.
Alizard. You're after me too, aren't you?
Not this time. It is a terrible thing, having your blood on my hands.
Huh? What are you talking?
You don't really get to see the point where he would have actually attacked her or failed to save her. I guess maybe he probably just failed to save her in previous timelines.
Guido, sorry. We barely bought you enough time.
Well, figured I'd have to get my claws dirty.
Ironically, I have actually seen a couple of wolf female anthropomorphic characters since I first saw this animation, and they are drawn a lot better than that one was.
Your power, you see. Your tails are pockets of magic.
And this whole Guido character
I will gain all the power I need to change Velsar.
really isn't playing any role,
Yeah, if.
and
Guess I should have said when, Now die.
The Dragon Newt second in command character doesn't really play much of a role.
Do you think peace is
And the
so
mother
cheap?
of
Wolf
Sekai,
Chief,
the
it can
Nine-Tailed
be
Fox,
bought for the price of several tails.
she just gets killed.
What would you know? You're just a talking carcass.
Back off!
It would make
Has
some
nothing to do with
sense
this.
to make a werewolf class,
We'll all be
of
meaningless
cards.
if you die here.
since there's already a dragon
Why can't
dragon
anyone in
bloodcraft
this world make sense?
class of cards. If you're going to add a new
Looks like we're
class,
finally in agreement.
if anything,
A few too many
I
nights
think
to
it's
pop
pretty
Sunday.
obvious though you shouldn't have character classes or leader classes.
But I cannot get inebriated.
Then why are you here? That useless lizard sent you.
One of the things
Like slicing through butter.
I think I've seen as I've tried to learn about more obscure collectible card games is there is
You're no match
always
for
this
me.
desire to
Seriously,
find a new gimmick
I swear
and
you're
do
even
something
dumber than a
different
pup.
and make it feel
Listen,
like it
those
isn't
are
just
full
a
of fools
generic
like you.
Magic the Gathering
Prey who act
ripoff.
like they're king of the jungle, but you're delusional.
But that
The
being
Lord of
said,
Darkness
Pokemon is
mine.
pretty
I'll
much
rip his
an
head off
exact
his
Magic the
body and his
Gathering,
crown off his
a
head.
clone,
Then all of Velsar will
and
bow to
it
its
plays
new
very
king,
well for its
Lord
audience.
Guido.
Yu-Gi-Oh!
So will you.
Is just insanity in a box. So I don't know if you can copy
But you're hurt.
what Yu-Gi-Oh did as
Far
far as
greater,
getting people's
more
attention,
terrifying
because the
fate
cards
awaits you.
really don't make any
You
sense,
must
and
not fear.
there is no real structure
I
or
too
idea
used to.
behind it.
Many times, I have gained nothing but pain. I have stabbed you.
Almost
as you
certainly
cried,
you would have cards that
summoned
have
you as you screamed.
fire, so he
Until
really did
finally
kill
I
Sekai.
realized
Uh,
You have a soul.
like,
No one
you-
can take that
if you're gonna
from
make a collectible card game, you'd have fire,
you.
water,
No one.
earth, maybe air,
So
and
there is
then
no need to
light
fear.
and dark for a
I
rock,
don't-
paper, scissors
I don't
idea.
understand.
Um,
No more
probably. But that doesn't mean you need
I'm
a
sorry.
specific fire deck that only can use fire cards or anything like that.
I'm not like those dragon newts. I consider it pathetic to die for honor.
And while
talking. I
Shadowcraft
do not seek honor.
doesn't have
Then what are
that
you
kind of
doing
system,
here?
it effectively has
What indeed?
a very similar system
What could I want from you,
with 8
Guido?
character classes,
You
whereas
need to watch your tongue.
air, earth, fire, and water plus
You desire to
light and
seize
dark
the
would only
throne
be
and become
6
the new Lord of Darkness.
character classes.
Precisely. And it has nothing to do with you.
But that dream is not unique to you. It is shared by every other soul in Velsar.
So yeah,
Huh?
Everyone wants to wear the crown. You are just one of many. But you are not a key character, Guido. You will never be anything but an extra.
they even directly are telling you he's not important as a
I
character.
will never be.
Die!
So is he just gonna
Would
kill
be
him?
Mercy.
Huh?
I long for death so much it hurts. I cannot rid myself of my desire, so I drink, hoping to forget. You called me pathetic. You were not wrong.
There is always a question as far as
What are you?
what
Now
happens if a
remember,
vampire
your blood is unsavory.
drinks a werewolf's blood.
Not rude. Blood arts.
Yeah, I don't think vampires can really thrive off drinking.
I've had enough.
Drink off
You.
It does not matter.
of
This is
werewolves.
just another dream, soon to end.
The problem
Use
with
your
having
claws
specific
and tear me apart.
character classes
I will ask you one more time.
like Hearthstone did,
What
it
do
was
you
supposed to
want?
imply that there would be
Nothing.
a general
I
concept
wish I wanted
of a gameplay
nothing.
mechanic. But as they added more and more
words.
expansions, particularly in
We'll meet
Hearthstone,
again.
that
You're
specific
insane.
character class got and lost several gameplay mechanics.
Was he?
And
He didn't
most of
make any
the
sense.
game-winning decks that people would play had very
cares?
little to do with
Nothing
that
will matter
specific
once
hero
I'm the Lord of
class.
Darkness.
And Hearthstone had the hero abilities per hero class. And Shadowverse kind of has that same idea, but
Woken up, have we?
it doesn't
How you
really
feeling?
work.
Get me a bloodshot.
So clearly that path could not have been the victory path. And so we see Alucards or Alazards in scenario and bad ending.
Let us talk about something that happened.
And that would have been
long ago.
probably the point where
This world
they
was created by the
stopped
Lord in
adding
darkness.
content for a while,
The Lord bathed
and
the
this would be
world in
the
darkness.
reset
earth to
in the
many races.
second half of the
Then he fell asleep.
subchapters
atop a tower.
content.
These
So,
races all
and it's
wanted
important
the
to point out
slumbering
that means
Lord's throne.
all four of the characters would
They
have had
decided they would defeat
probably
Lord
the
of
first
Darkness
four of their
and
chapters,
seize his crown.
and then
Yokai with various
you
powers,
would have had to wait
werewolves
a
who fought
while
as a
to get
pack,
the last four
dragons,
chapters for each
or
of the four
individually
characters.
powerful. There was also a fourth race, which feasted on the blood of others to gain power. Vampires. All the races groveled before us. They were nothing more than vessels of blood to us. We were the predators. But our reign would not last forever.
Vampires clearly would do very well in this world that seems to be in perpetual
Our pride
darkness.
blinded us. We did not see that the yokai, werewolves, and dragon newts were uniting in the face of a common enemy. Father! Mother! I... Time cannot kill us, but we were not without weakness. My entire
It's kind of hard to care more about Alazard when you know he's like immortal. His parents could have been killed hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago.
To escape. I ran. Was it tears or sweat that ran down my cheeks? Was my pulse racing from rage or fear?
Tragedy plus time just equals
I
history,
could not escape from Velsar.
to
I
misquote a
wandered
phrase.
without purpose, keeping to the shadows. But I did not forget. The world is my enemy, and everyone in it must perish. I will be the blade that exacts revenge. I cannot die.
Again, we're just getting a
That vow I
completely
made in the
black
shadows was
background.
like a lighthouse to me. Eventually, everyone forgot about vampires. We became bloodsuckers, things of legends. And that's when I emerged from the shadows. I had been hidden away for so long that even the night felt dazzling.
Be interesting to
Finally,
know if he's affected by
I
a
saw
cross,
the way out.
considering this world
And there
seems
was
to
only one
not
thing
have any
I
humans
needed to
or
do.
Christianity or
Take
religion that
my
would
revenge.
imply that a cross would
Rinse
affect him,
off the blood.
or holy water
blood.
could affect him.
It was the first time I had tasted blood in many years. It was like
This
sweet
still
nectar
moves
on the
far
tongue.
too slow.
It replenished me, awakened my senses.
You don't
So
need a
much time
flashback. This could have
passed,
been just
but
something
the world had not
that he
changed.
said to somebody.
So I basked in the violence. I strangled the leader of the Dragon Newts. Stabbed the small Ninetails.
So his original
Cut
story.
down the man known as Kagero. However, When the Lord of Darkness awoke, he struck me down hard. Even my blood arch did not stand a chance.
So he even made it to
For
the fight
he was
with
a great god,
the Lord of Darkness.
one that was looking for his next vessel. And I was unworthy. He put an end to my eternal life. Or rather, it should have ended. What? How could this be? I was supposed to have perished many, many times. I have no memories of my death.
So
but I can feel it.
the problem here is we
in my
still kind of
flesh.
have a rough
And I can
explanation
smell
as
the
to,
blood that
is the
drenches
fortune
this
teller
world.
lady really still
realized
trying to kill
That I in Velsar itself
the Lord
were
of
locked
Darkness?
in a never-ending cycle of life and death.
I think she might be,
Of
and
course.
just she may not be
I
that
thought
successful
I was
at it.
dreaming at first,
Or
or
maybe
that I
she's
had
going
finally
about it
gone
in a
mad.
very weird way.
but it was the truth.
Like, if you were to naively believe her actions to be good, it does kind of feel like she's trying to kill Ishildrig. But at the end of the day, I think she also empowered him.
I always come back.
So maybe
There
that is a
no
real
escape
goal.
from Velsar. It is
Maybe
a
she
spell,
is just straight up
and my only
creating
companion
stronger
is
and stronger
loneliness.
versions of these
This
main
was a story
characters.
of something
So one of them
long,
could be a
long
worthy
ago,
vessel for
back when I thought I
Ishildrig.
had something to fight
Therefore, they would be a worthy vessel for a keeper. And maybe somebody's gonna come in and steal the body of one of these characters. If we were to think about it from that perspective, though, I don't know if any of the characters actually look evil enough to be bad guys. 5.6 megabytes. This is going to be long. If anything,
Just
what
as
they
I
could
thought.
do,
No
since there's
effect
supposed
at
to
all.
be like 5 or
That's the
6,
strongest
maybe
stuff
even
I've
as
got.
many as
What
9
sort of monster
keepers.
are you, my friend?
We've
get
seen
used to it.
Nexus, we've seen Nerva.
Normally people die before they
If
develop a
there
tolerance.
are 4 characters here,
Yes, that
each
has
of
happened
them
before
were
too.
getting strong enough to be
Trying
a
to find
vessels
meaning in what you say is like
for
trying
one
to
of the
find my way
keepers.
through fog.
Might be interesting if all of a sudden
That
you
may
have
be because I
4
live in fog.
4 keepers
A
appearing all at
haze
once,
so thick I can see nothing but
and
white. And every
then
time I
that gets
thought
to
I
like
found some kind of
a
sign
final
or
battle
answer,
where
they
it's
were just
not
illusions.
just
My despair is
the
never
main
ending.
characters fighting against Narva
get
or
better the more you
Nexus.
drink, you
It's
know.
the main characters fighting against
I know.
all of the keepers. I wouldn't be surprised
Hey,
if there actually
you
were 8
there.
keepers to particularly match the 8
Sorry
original
about my
characters.
friends. I know they can be kind of loud. Well, all Dragonutes can, actually. We're
And
not really known for
I
being
wouldn't even be
quiet.
surprised if
Not
at some
about
level they throw out
I've
that
been
idea
watching you
that
for a while
the 8
now.
original
You can
characters
really
are
drink,
supposed to
can't
be
you?
vessels
Even we
for
don't
the
drink
8
bloodshots.
keepers.
I just lack
Of course,
the
I
color
doubt
of
they would just end the story on a bad ending where in which all the
So you're
keepers
into blood or something?
take over all the main
I
characters'
suppose you could say
bodies.
that.
Hmm.
Hey, you. We've been talking about you. See, you're pretty stuck up, aren't you?
Do you
Yeah.
even know who this is?
This time,
Doc, you are always surrounded by people, but you don't open your heart to them.
see,
You are alone.
notice in
Just
parentheses
like I
here
am.
and voiced.
Yes, better than you do.
Why didn't they do that in the previous subchapter?
What did you say?
I feel like
Hey
this
now,
is
chill
probably
out.
the
There's no need
timeline
to get up in his face like that.
in which
Though, to
Trock
be
has his
honest,
good
friend,
ending.
I kind of agree with her.
Although
It's awfully
I
rude
don't
to
know
not greet someone when they walk by.
if that doesn't mean he
Especially
just
someone who's
doesn't
been
die
paying
again.
So much attention to you.
Is that Dragonute custom?
More of a personal rule of mine. I'm sure you get it, right? So you're ignoring me now, huh? Well, let me tell you something. I don't like your attitude.
A shame. This route is not ideal. I quite liked drinking with you. But even if I told you that, you would not understand. We were friends once.
So by
Drinking companions.
hearing his internal monologue,
Man, I knew it. You're drunk. You still look awful pale, though.
we get some
What do
new
you say we
perspective
get
on
some
this
blood
story.
Back into those cheeks. Come on, liven them up.
Liven up, huh? What a joke. This whole world is a joke.
So we're gonna have another fight. Taking down the two
Look at
unimportant
that. I guess
characters.
you're not as weak as you look, huh? But
You aren't that impressive either. Am I right? You dragonutes see the world in black and white. People as either formidable enemies or helpless quarry. Preying on the weak.
A little too slow.
That is the dragonoot way, no?
you don't know the first thing about us.
That may be true. I know nothing. Accomplished nothing.
There's a different way to present these stories,
Again
certainly,
and again,
where it
but
could
not
have,
once have I been able to do
in
anything
each
for
chapter,
him. I
said,
see
hey,
him
do you want to follow the
stand by
Nine
as
Tails, the
fate slips
Dragonoot,
into his
the
doom.
Vampire, or the
Perhaps,
Swordsman?
perhaps not.
And then
You're
you
starting
would
to make
see
me
their
real
one
angry,
story,
pal.
and then it would ask,
Drop.
have their paths cross again, and then
Don't
ask
call
you,
me as if
who
we're
do you want to
friends.
follow now?
Your
And then you would
quarrel
see
does not
more of
lie
the
with
story.
me.
Because
Your anger stems
if you
from an
did
issue
that,
far
it would still be
deeper.
the same amount of content, but
You cannot move
it would
forward
open up
until
the
you come to
door
understand that.
for a player to say, hey, I just care about the
We
Nine
have been
Tails character.
enemies on the
I'm going to
battlefield
follow her and see her
and companions at
story
bar.
throughout,
I've tried everything,
and
but
not bother with the other three characters'
I cannot
stories.
change a thing.
Whereas the obsessive completionist
You got
would
a
want to
name?
play each route,
Aluzard.
and the perfect route
Aluzard, huh?
would ideally
That's
be
a
that
name I
you
won't
go
forget
with
anytime soon.
one character one time and another character at a
Sorry
different
for all the
time.
trouble. I guess we'll be leaving now. Later. Oh, and take care on your way home.
This feels like this is a slightly different ending also.
What's wrong with you? No one messes with Drock. That was your first time meeting him, right?
We have had blood shots together before.
What?
It is true. I can see it clearly in my mind.
I've had more than enough.
I see.
Yeah, I'm back to
I knew
actually
you were a
caring, so I'm
beast,
going
but
quiet.
I wasn't expecting this. I think I'm gonna be sick. Man, first time I've ever lost in a drinking contest.
Of course, the
I enjoyed myself.
one visual novel I've played with branching
You gotta be
paths
drunk.
that's most prominent would be 9 Doors, 9 Hours, 9
So you're a
People,
friend of Drock's.
999, or
You don't
whatever
look
it's
like it,
actually
you know.
called. It's called
I'm
999
nothing
something.
to him. Just a pathetic fly that appeared and made a quick buzz by
That
the ear.
visual novel did have branching paths,
And
but
to
it was
me,
so
he is,
incredibly long
oh,
that, and you really
I
did
wonder.
have to play each path
Sometimes we
to get
cooperate,
to an
and sometimes we
a
kill each other.
acceptable ending.
It is hard to be certain. I can
So yeah,
no longer look at him in the face.
there is this
I
weirdness
do
where
not know if we are friends
on
or
Steam
enemies.
there are definitely what they
there
call
is one
kinetic
thing
visual
I am
novels with no
certain of.
branching paths that are less
Rather
than
raising our
an
fists,
hour, 10-20 minutes, that
I would prefer
I
raising
don't
a
think there would
glass
be
with
any
him.
reason why anybody would want to play
The stuff
something
you
that
say makes me
short.
wonder if I've gone
But then there are
crazy.
also visual novels that are like
No doubt.
an hour, 100 hours
Another bloodshot,
potentially,
please.
or more,
Make this your last.
and you have
I
to be
will. My last bloodshot.
you have to be kind of careful to get the quality ones that are of a decent length without being ridiculously too long or ridiculously
About
too
time.
short.
Idiot. You think you can backtalk our young master and live to tell the tale?
Doesn't matter if you
There
try
is
to
also
apologize or
certainly
run
a
away.
point that if you really have to
You're
care about the
screwed.
characters for some reason
I have no
to play a
intention
visual
of doing
novel,
either.
and
even
this
if I were to kill
chapter,
all of you,
with its 4
fate itself
subchapters
will
and
not
4 new
change.
characters,
That's
is
right.
not
Once you've angered the young master, there's no escaping it.
going to really be able to make
Jock,
you care about the
It
new
cannot be
characters,
saved.
Huh?
because
What are you talking about?
you're
Once
going to end up
before, we were
just
allies.
seeing them removed
Told
from
me about you.
the storyline.
You are irreplaceable to him. You are the ones who raised him. He could name each and every one of you. But all of you, you all call him the same thing. Young master.
What about it?
Nothing. It has nothing to do with me. Whether he lives or dies and what becomes of you, it does not affect me at all. Him, Nine Tails, the sword. Sometimes they do remember me. We have joined forces before. But even then, it was futile.
So
I will not
apparently
beg for my life. So let
he's
me
got to
make another
maybe get
request.
everybody,
Call him
not
Drake.
just the 4
Just once is
characters,
We've heard enough.
like just
This
get
is the end
everybody
for you.
unified against the Lord of Darkness to hopefully see if that's
Another
enough people to
futile
defeat
effort.
him.
Very well. End this chapter. We will meet again in the next.
So he's just gonna keep on getting killed. I wouldn't be surprised if we see him killed a couple more times. There's something slightly ironic about seeing a vampire getting killed over and over again.
A long time ago, when I was a young man, I was alone. Everyone I once
Now we're
loved
back
is
to
dead.
black screens.
The whole world was my enemy. I ran and hid, surviving off the blood of cold corpses. And yet I still endured, because of that vow I made to myself. It gave me direction.
They just
and
needed to
plunged me
establish
into
some kind of
further
art
darkness.
that represented someone's
My
inner
loneliness
thoughts.
deepened.
Just like
But now
maybe
things
some
are
question
different.
marks flying around in space or
Now,
something.
I
Question marks, exclamation
different.
points. Just a void of fog, even if it was just some level of detail instead of pure blackness.
Your eyes are playing tricks on you.
I'm telling you, I saw a foxtail just now.
Hey, you! You're the one who was picking
Of
a
course,
fight at the bar earlier.
so
No, that was just the alcohol talking. I would never defy Guido.
I am
of
not
course
feeling it
here
this time.
is getting
If I do
shorter
not
and
help that
shorter.
girl here, the nine-tailed fox will return, challenge the Lord of Darkness, and perish in battle. After she falls, there will be an all-out war between the werewolves and the dragon newts. The yokai get involved, and everyone dies. What a curse. As if our destruction were preordained. No matter. Time to wander yet again.
There is certainly a point here where
You there? What are you doing?
you
All right. I almost forgot.
could
What are you
overly
here,
focus
all
in
alone
a
and
Groundhog
forlorn?
Day style scenario like
Is
this
a dead end.
on the wrong things
Oh, are you inebriated?
and never
truly is a
actually be at the
bloodthirsty
right
blade.
place to learn
And
the
smell
thing you
of
need to
freshly
learn,
spilled
assuming
blood
there is even
thick
a
on
thing
him.
you need to learn.
And yet,
Um,
every time, I do not notice
so,
his approach until he
it
is
is
right
possible
on me.
he
Your
could
name is... What was it again?
always focus on the nine tails at the beginning of his
Have we met
loops
before?
and never
Oddly, not a single
actually
scratch on you
know
from
what else
death.
is going on around the
But
world
no matter.
or in his even general region.
My. So there are still some embers burning in you. Exactly what I had
There
hoped.
was a movie
A sharp and
Um,
violent sword. like
where
flames that
a
shred
couple of
everything they
characters were
touch.
stuck in a Groundhog Day
Whenever,
loop.
wherever,
And
however
it starts
we
with
meet,
one character,
he always has
and
the same smell of blood after a hunt.
by about the
I do not
halfway
mind
point of the movie,
predictability.
it becomes
Without
obvious
having to
that the
deal
first
with the
character is
ally
stuck in the
or enemy talk.
Groundhog Day loop,
No
living
matter
the
how
same
many
day
times
over
the
and over
cycle
again,
repeats,
is not
you
really
will
an
change
important
one day.
character in the story.
Of course.
He's
I
just
am
a
and can
nobody
only be
in the
myself.
story, and it is actually the second
I
character
approve.
who is
What
important,
a coincidence.
or
I
has
do
any
too.
reason to break the loop, or would ever be able to figure out how to break the loop.
Allow me to test you out.
Of course, you can't really tell much of a story if Alizard here was
You are
just stuck
welcome to
living his
try.
life over and over again, and he never had any chance of breaking the loop or changing anything. That's not a story people want to hear.
The feel of my blade sliding through your flesh. It is fantastic.
It is
This marks the end.
roughly estimated in the movie Groundhog Day that
And this
the main
concludes
character
the fight.
lived years, maybe hundreds if not thousands of
You
years
truly are a
for the
strange
same
one.
day,
You are so very
and
much
it
weak.
just didn't get represented that way very well.
So why then?
Instead,
do
it
you
feels like he
smell
kind of
of
relived the
blood?
same day,
You can
maybe
smell
for
the
a
blood of
month or
past
so.
lives on me. What a troublesome foe. Once the
But
stain
yeah.
is set in, it cannot be removed.
At one point, the main character in Groundhog Day,
You're hiding
shows
your
that
true
he's like
strength.
a master
You have but
piano
one
player,
life. You should give
which
more
would have
thought to
probably
how you use
taken
it. Now is not the
at
time
least a
to be holding
decade to
back.
learn.
I remember now. Your name is Kikage.
My, where did you hear that name?
We have battled to the death many times before. I had learned your name then.
Why, I have no memory of that.
As for what you are, I do not recall. Or perhaps I never knew.
I myself, a single blade is what I am. If you don't feel like fighting for real, that's fine. I've taken a liking to that scent of yours, so I'm feeling generous. What's your name? I'll put it on your
So,
gravestone.
how would this end?
A lovely name it is. I'll make sure your death is just as
How would this
exquisite.
end, like, differently?
I
If
fondly
Alizard
remember
killed the
this moved to our attack
Nine-Tails
from the front,
Fox
but rather it comes from the side.
and Tsukikage,
Right. Your blade.
My sword will
I mean,
guide
you
you
could
through the
defeat
veil
those
to the
two
red
people, but
fall path.
him defeating
Behold,
Geats really wouldn't solve
Bard of
anything.
Decay.
But if he were to
Was
just solve
magnificent.
everyone else's problems, then the three other characters'
Beautiful. You
stories would be
blossomed beautifully.
kind of silly
I must
and
say, you were really
impactless.
something. You were the first to meet gazes with me before my strikes landed. Fascinating. Truly fascinating. I shall engrave your name here. It was a pleasure. Now, that fool Kagero. It is about time he reaches me with a strength and resolve.
You know, we never really got an explanation as to why one arm was chopped off, other than since one is the sword and one is a
Tsukikage.
sheath.
I'm
And
sorry he did this to you.
it implies that there's a yearning, perhaps, to
It is all
reunite,
coming together. I see the secret behind
even if
this
he doesn't
technique.
consciously
Art
know
of
that.
Decay. Alizard.
But they
It is thanks
they
to
don't
you
really spell
I am
that
now
out.
prepared. I will slay him without fail. May you rest in peace.
That would be very weird if Alizard dying at that point is what gives the good ending for him.
I once prided myself on
It would
being
make a
self-reliant.
little bit more sense if the soul of
had purpose.
Orisa
I was to
popped
be the
up here and
blade that
there,
would
and
avenge
she
my
did
parents,
some of the
Defeat the Lord of
changes in the
Darkness.
timelines
I strangled the leader of the dragon.
instead of the fortune teller.
Stabbed at the small nine tails. Cut down the man known as Kagero. And even beheaded another who shared his blood. But no matter how much I struggled, I was always defeated somewhere down the line. And ultimately, by the Lord of Darkness. The more it repeated, the more I was lost in the never-ending cycle. And yet I learned things I wish I had never known. Guido is a violent werewolf, but you are not a key character. Drak is a savage dragonoot, but only because he feels bound by the ways of his clan. At his core, he is kind. Seka is naive, foolish even, but her heart is pure. Something rare and precious here in Velsar. Kagero.
And again, this feels like this could have been a wrap-up.
However, his eyes are gentle.
And I guess it technically is.
Tsukikage is a malicious sword, but that is what he was made to be. And at times, he even seemed to fear himself. To fight the Lord of Darkness, I have to drink their blood. But with every cycle, my soul gets chipped away, little by little.
That'd be an interesting idea, certainly, if he's just gonna drink the blood of each of the characters and get strong enough.
His beloved wings from him, I felt like a monster. The small nine tails, Seka. She cried and pleaded for her life.
I guess I have to kind of applaud being willing to
It felt as though I had robbed the world
kill
of a gem.
basically a kid.
The swordsman, Kagero.
I could see an idea of doing something like a Vampire the Masquerade style collectible card game. There almost certainly has to be something like that. And then playing as a vampire character and being able to steal the abilities and drink the blood of other monsters would kind of make sense.
I wish I had remained a fool. 'Cause at least...
But it would become, I think, a little exhaustive for a general audience. Too much vampire idea.
And yet I was unable to
themes.
kill the Lord of Darkness. At times, I fought alongside them. Together, we challenged the Lord of Darkness with our combined powers and strengths.
See, they're saying that they did fight together.
At times, I tried to flee and sought lands that still knew light and hope. But it
Tried to run away.
always ended the same.
Nothing works.
It made no difference who lived and who died. It mattered not.
Well, then this whole chapter is pointless, I guess.
The Lord of Darkness cannot be defeated. I would fall and wake again. Everything. Absolutely everything.
You really don't want to send this message to the player. I've spent like 4 hours going through this story.
Holding a sword to holding a glass. When did I begin to pine for liquor over blood? Then came the day even liquor could not make me forget. With nowhere to escape, I grew tired. And I relinquished everything. I cannot live, and I cannot die. I once thought countless lifetimes were a blessing. Now, they are my greatest curse. I ask once again, world, is it you who has gone mad? Or is it me?
This really feels like a terrible way to end the
How
story.
many times must I repeat this? How many times must I fall? Enough. Enough already. When will it end? Why? 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 Why is this my fate?
It's kind of hard
I
to
was
be
robbed. My father,
to even relate to or like a vampire anyways, though. Vampires are just always established as the bad guys.
I wallowed in shame alone.
So it's kind of hard to break that feeling.
I once had a purpose. I were to avenge my family and resurrect my kind. I had a lighthouse to guide me through the darkness.
I guess resurrecting his kind is possible, so then he could maybe turn everybody into a vampire.
But no longer am I self-reliant.
Turn the Ninetales and the Dragon Newton vampires and the swords and the vampires.
Everything. How wonderful it would be to rejoice in life like all
Make them
others.
stronger.
I have screamed until my voice became hoarse. I have grieved until my tears ran dry. There is nothing I can do. There never has been. From the moment I emerged from the shadows,
This is getting repetitive.
Absolutely nothing.
And demoralizing for the player.
Why did things turn out this way?
Would the answer to that question help you in any way?
You once said you were an audience member, that you are not part of this play. Then you must know all I have been through. I have had enough of pain and of suffering. You can feel it, can you not? The loneliness that echoes within.
You've already asked me this question, but just to remind you, make a circle with your thumb and forefinger. That's the cycle you're currently stuck in. Now make a circle with your arms. That's the cycle I travel in. Do you honestly believe I'd need another soul to feel complete? As you are, you can't possibly hope to make a difference. The winged boy will forever be bound to the earth. The little fox will forever be prey. And you will forever wander. But of
She
course,
doesn't mention the
tides of
sword
fate
character.
can't be diverted. So don't be too hard on yourself. All right?
Apparently nobody can actually successfully kill
Let me ask you
her.
one last thing.
Anything you like.
Have I ever gotten beyond this point in my story?
No.
Is suffering all there is? Is there truly nothing I can do?
Woken up, have we? How you feeling?
Awful.
So it looks like he tried to attack her. That is just an awful ending, though. Like, the other three endings were kind of like good endings. But this is just... That's just a terrible place to end it at.
The
And
ending of our newest tale
they could have
is
just
as of yet unwritten.
finished this entire chapter instead of
cycle
stretching it
repeats
out to another
again and
chapter.
again. Claws and fangs break
But
and
clearly,
shatter before
instead they've
fading into
given us
darkness.
two
They
kind of
strive with
fluff
all their
pieces
strength,
to
but
stretch
cannot
for
defy
time.
fate. They stretch forth their hands, but cannot grasp victory.
Oh yeah. I also said I was going to look at the new
I
chapter
suppose it can't
in
be
between the
helped.
last recording and
The
this
curtains of
recording, and then I
fate have
immediately forgot
already
about that.
fallen on this stage.
But almost certainly the answer is no. I'm not
Pride.
going to
Peace,
cover the new
Resolve.
chapter that's just been added.
resignation.
But I should check it.
None of it matters in the end. This play was written to be a tragedy from the start.
This
What a
ending
pity.
fits
It breaks my heart.
pretty much better.
Just kidding. I left my heart behind forever ago.
Hmm.
Anyhow, the cycles continue until fate leads them to the ultimate conclusion. Isn't that right, Nexus? It's been quite some time, hasn't it?
It almost makes sense
Guardian of this world,
if
why do you seek endless cycles of death and rebirth?
Nexus here was trying to make
Why do you
this
think?
world end with Serenity,
Thou art but a broken vessel, destined to
and
succumb.
she is doing the exact opposite. The
There's no
fortune
need to
teller
get bent out of
Flawless
shape.
is doing the
Why,
exact
I'm
opposite of
doing all this
creating
just for you.
Serenity, and
Keeper,
instead
Nexus,
making
just for you.
conflict. Almost as if they're fighting each other in
Do
some
remember
weird
that this world is under my control.
metatextual
No one can
way.
meddle in it unless I say so.
Vessel of stagnation, know thy fate is destruction.
Yep.
I am a keeper. I am Nexus of Serenity. I bringeth harmony unto worlds.
Yeah. See, it's like stagnation versus harmony, which really aren't direct
Harmony.
opposites.
It's very lovely if I do say so myself. But a tad too
Of course,
much, and
the way
things will
Nexus
lose their
brings
interest.
harmony is by
Well
just
then, it's time for
convincing
me to slumber once again.
people
Next,
to
we'll revisit that
give up on
nostalgic
their own
place.
lives and letting the world
Perhaps this
be
time,
destroyed.
the bullet of fate will hit its mark.
Yeah. So basically 4 hours of teasing is all this chapter is. It's so bad. It's really, really bad. And doing this for 4 hours does not get me to play 4 hours of multiplayer of Shadowverse by any means. The good news is here, this is a single story with 14 chapters. But for the most part, this could have been probably 15 or 16 chapters at most and told the same story. When all of this is wrapped up, it just takes you to the final loop, which then I think is going to try and wrap up all of Fate's Trigger. And then we can kind of look here and let's just see. Yeah, right now, if I was going to try and cover this solo story, I could only play as this one character. And I am not 100% sure that his chapters would even go anywhere as far as stages. Like, I'd have to go through all of these, I'd have to fight, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's only 4 of 8 or 9 chapters to see, so yeah. There is every reason to end on chapter 15, which means there's every reason for me to make 2 more episodes just so we can get some small event, some small reward, as it were, for going through all of that, some small wrap up for the story. It's not like I even really remember the story, because it's been long, convoluted, and it really has just been several stories in a row. Then when you actually look at cards, you have a card like this that it's not really a character I recognize. You have a card like this, which is not a character I recognize. You have a card like this, which is not a character I recognize. And same is true here. Krampus. Yeah, I doubt we're going to have a Christmas story. This is the same card. Another card I don't recognize. And then one card that might be related to one of the sword characters. Maybe. But maybe not. Because the names aren't the same. Anything like that. And the flavor text here. As the one thing I do like about Shadowverse, though, is that it makes the picture way more important.
Screw you.
And then voice acting. That's kind of ironically the right one. And then there's still weirdness, even though Shadowverse is trying to become a little bit more kid-friendly. It's not going out of its way to censor things. This is the newest expansion. You would think if they were trying not to show belly buttons or tight shorts, they could easily avoid that. If they were trying not to show big amounts of cleavage or thighs, they wouldn't show that. And just when you do get a beefcake character, there's a decent amount of skin being shown here, even for fans of beefcake. So they still are kind of leaning on that idea of being a little bit provocative in its art style. Now, I don't think there's really any way they could not lean on that if we dissolve the extra cards. I think I probably, in a fairly brief amount of time, did manage to get a fairly large collection of these cards. Problem here, of course, is that you're going to run into a situation where, unless I was continuously playing Shadowverse, which I just don't have interest or time for, there will be limited time events where limited cards come out, and those will be things that you probably can't get after that limited time event. And there will just be more and more expansions as things happen that are going to break into just add more cards. Yeah. Making it your collection, however many cards we have here. We have 194 pages with 16 cards per page, even though some of them are like different variants on the same cards. But of the 197 they could be, there are actually 225. So 30 pages times 8, 16, 24 is 240 cards that I don't have at least one of. And had I just not been overwhelmed and been given a better offer with Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, I would have just had to stick with Shadowverse and probably would have gotten most of these cards eventually. Give it another year or two. But I definitely was overwhelmed with the occasional extra solo mode, the almost consistent arena runs, although there isn't one now. They've now introduced Crosscraft, and then usually when there's not something happening, they're still giving away extra chests. Shadowverse was not generous with the player's time, certainly, and that became a problem, and they definitely wanted people to spend a lot of money there. Anyways, I'm going to leave it at that. That's going to be it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. If you want to support me even further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wish list or a gift card. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.